All right, guys, let's go ahead and jump into it. First, we'll discuss Gus Malzahn as the new offensive coordinator for FSU. It was announced on Saturday, right before the FSU and Florida game. Gus officially resigned as being the head coach for the UCF Knights and decided to bring his talents to Tallahassee and be the offensive coordinator for FSU. In the past 3 seasons, UCF has had the top, and this has been Gus's staple, to be quite honest with you. Even going back to Auburn, we played against them the past 3 seasons. Gus has had a top 10 rushing offense and a top 20 overall total offense the past 3 seasons. This year specifically, he had a top 16 offense and a top 7 rushing offense. So that's pretty much been the identity for Gus Malzahn, even going back to his Auburn days. Hell, we saw it firsthand when we saw it firsthand. We saw it firsthand against Auburn in the national championship game. That's how good that rushing attack is. He had Trey Marshall as the quarterback. I forget the running back name, but you guys remember the running back. He was in the talks of, the Heisman Trophy. Was it Mason? Yeah, Mason was the running back. You guys remember he was in talks of being a Heisman candidate and did a Heisman pose against us. Unfortunately, it was a little too early. We had Jameis Winston and company on the other side to, go ahead and get the go-ahead score for the national championship. But even going back then, Gus' offense has been real specific as far as running the ball. Now, one thing they struggled with this year was passing the ball, and I do think that has a lot to do with the quarterback that they chose this upcoming season. The guy from Arkansas was the quarterback, and we all know well that the quarterback at when he was at Arkansas, I forget the quarterback's name that they ended up transferring, but he wasn't a great passer at all. He was more so a running type of quarterback. Now, Mike Norvell and him, they could probably blend together and have a perfect marriage, so to speak, in regards to Gus being taking over the run game and Mike having his hand on the passing game. I think the receiver coach that he does hire, running back coach, whoever it may be, I feel like we could keep Coach Yak in some capacity, but that should be a guy that he targets that has some experience as well as far as pass game concepts and things like that. So it could be a perfect marriage between Mike and Gus as far as the run game and the pass game. I do feel like Mike Norvell's pass offense has to improve some, but I do think also, better receiver coach as well as far as coaching these guys' techniques and things like that. But just Gus in general, like I stated, hell, the Russian attack has been our Achilles heel this year. It's supposed to be a staple this year coming into the season. Supposed to have a veteran offensive line, a stable of running backs, and we were supposed to, like I said, get the running game going this year, but it didn't happen. So to have a guy that's been consistently great within the running game with Gus Malzahn, I feel like that's going to be a plus for FSU to bring him in that capacity, in that department, because I feel like we could get instant results within the run game. And you guys, not spoken previous lives, I just wasn't a fan with our current state of the offensive line as far as the bodies we had, the body types, the athleticism, and things like that. I really wasn't a fan with all of the pulling and things we did with our interior linemen. Maybe that changes now with Gus's approach, and of course, Gus knows what it looks like. Shout out to Big No, my guy. He says this all the time as far as knows what it look like as far as body types and things like that. The type of guys you would bring into a program from a recruiting standpoint and from an offensive line standpoint, running back, receivers, all that type of deal. Gus Malzahn knows what it looks like. He goes back to his days at Auburn, really good offensive line, really good run game. Even at UCF, even though UCF has a lot of resources, it's not an SEC logo in that nature, right? But still, he had a very good offensive line, very good run game. So when it comes to the look, he knows what it looks like, and what plays a part in that is his offensive line coach and Herd Hand. So if he can bring in a guy like Herd Hand, who has had experience at Auburn, offensive line coach at Texas as well, current UCF offensive line coach, I feel like that would be a home run hire on both ends to bring in Gus, Herb Hand, and of course, like I said, marries that with Mike Norvell. That'd be a very good plug and fits for our most vulnerable spot within the offense, which is the run game and the offensive line. Herd has done an excellent job in developing guys. Now, this has been officially announced as far as the offensive line coach, but it's been rumored and the ties are there as far as possibly coming to FSU. So I don't want to jump ahead and have people thinking that Herd Hand has been hired by FSU. That has not been the case. Gus has been hired officially, but Herd is the guy that's on the offensive line hot board, and it only makes sense. Like I said, these guys have been pretty much married together for an extended period of time, and even the time at Texas, Hurd was a very good recruiter out there and developer as well. So he could bring talent in. He knows what it looks like up front, and he could coach and develop that talent. So hopefully, from an offensive standpoint, just from a recruiting standpoint as well, we don't have that many guys committed within the recruiting class for sure. But you have a guy like Solomon Thomas, who was the crown jewel of the class. He's the guy you want to keep. And Hurd Hand is a guy that could possibly convince a Solomon Thomas to sign with Tallahassee and get the best out of him as far as the development standpoint, because the proof is in the pudding. You look at the guys he's put in the league, the guys he's developed, the results he's had within the run game as an offensive line coach. It speaks for itself. So that would be a home run hire on both ends, in my opinion, if we could get someone like Hurd Hand to FSU. He'll be able to develop the current guys that we have on the roster, and also he will be able to recruit and bring in the body types that we need. Because let's be honest, some of the body types that we have on our roster, as far as offensive line and the positions that they're playing, it just isn't what it should look like, right? We got certain guys like Mo Smith at center. Mo Smith is just an undersized center, and there's only so much you can do with that type of body type, and it showed over the years in regards to the lack of push we got up front at the center position, just for example. So I think Hurd Hand can do a good job of identifying talent, bringing that talent in, and developing that talent. And like I say, as far as Gus, you also get to take – Gus has been the head coach for a long time. He doesn't have that responsibility now. He can focus solely on offense and, creating matchups and things like that. And Gus has some asshole tendencies in him as well, too. What I mean by asshole tendencies, I mean he doesn't mind putting his foot on the throttle, foot on your neck, foot on the gas, foot on the throttle, and master some shit and kind of blowing your ass out and embarrassing you. He don't really mind putting points up and getting cute and getting fancy in certain ways. So that's a good thing as well, too. But like I said, from a play calling standpoint, he can just focus strictly on that, focus strictly on offense, and let Mike Norvell run the whole show as far as being a head coach. Something Gus hasn't really had the opportunity to do in a long time. So we can see, how much better his offense could be moving forward. Like I said, you got a top 10 rushing offense and a top 20 top 10 rushing offense and the top 20 overall offense this past year at UCF. And their defense wasn't great and their passing game wasn't great. Hell, we saw FSU's rushing offense, and I don't want to, just to kind of, I guess, give you guys a comparison. Let me go to the end of these stats. FSU is at the bottom of all this shit statistically within this 2000 year. Like I said, UCF had the 6th rushing attack in the country. Florida State finished with the 128th rushing attack in the country. So UCF was 122 spots better than FSU as far as running the football this year. So bringing the guy who knows how to run the football creatively as well. So I like that. I really like that as well. Recruiting. Gus is a hell of a recruiter too. He recruited at a high level at Auburn. Okay, a lot of people say, well, it's the SEC, it's the logo. Auburn got their bags out, this, that, and the third. Okay, perfect. That's fine. Goes to UCF. Recruits at a high level at UCF. Had those guys at their peak this year before the season started and losing started to happen. I think UCF was a top 10 class at a certain point. UCF was getting a lot of Florida guys that had some interest in the Florida State, Florida, and Miami. May not have been as high on the board for those schools in certain pecking order, but certainly would have been takes for those schools. And he had those guys picking UCF. So again, a hell of a recruiter, a really good recruiter. Did it both at Auburn, did it at UCF as well. Gus is a recruiter. I feel like he's a great guy on the trail as far as recruiting. Just some of the guys that were committed to UCF that were considering FSU. Defensive back Tony Williams out of Palm Beach, and that's a guy that FSU could probably get in play with at a certain point in time as well too. That's a guy that could probably get in play. That could probably be back in play for FSU at a certain time as well too. Tony Williams, defensive back from Palm Beach. If you guys remember, he was a guy that I mentioned over the summer a lot as far as recruiting that could possibly come to FSU, end up committing to UCF and sticking with UCF. That's a guy that Gus Malzahn beat out the in-state schools for, FSU specifically. So it can be done as far as what he could do. You put the FSU logo on his chest, then we can really make it happen. We have Gus in the fold as far as the offensive coordinator. I think that's going to be a perfect hire. We'll go from there.